John, thank you. Just making sure you can hear me and see my slide. All good?
Yeah.
Yes, we
Good,
are.
good. Well, thank you. So let's get rolling here. As Jeff Hill said, please get ready to take lots of notes. This is not a fluff webinar. We're going to dig into some strategies and tactics very, very quickly. Just as a reminder, my formal remarks, about 50 minutes, give or take. We'll take some questions. If for whatever reason we don't get to your question, don't have time, or for whatever reason, or something comes to you later, please, here's my email address, Bill Cates, not Bill Gates, we wish, but Bill Cates at referralcoach.com. I'm happy to take your question later. So don't forget that. And if you'd like the slides, I'm going to be giving you some very specific scripting and things that you can be doing and saying. So if you'd like to refer back to those later, all you got to do is send an email to me and just put NAIFA AR, NAIFA Arkansas in the subject line, and I'll know which deck to send to you. I just did NAIFA Texas yesterday, and I'm doing another group tomorrow, so I want to make sure I send the right deck to you. So you want to identify yourself. So as John mentioned in the intro, we do face a challenge. We faced this challenge long before COVID hit, and that is our prospects' brains are indeed overwhelmed with information. It's been estimated that the average person receives about 3,000 marketing messages a day. So no wonder everybody has erected barriers for us to get through. They're just deluged with information. And so how do we get our message through to these people, right? What do we need to do? Well, we need to have a message that hits the bullseye in their brain. We're going to talk a little bit about their brain in a second, that it resonates, it's relevant with them so that they'll pay attention and stay paying attention, and then compelling to move them to take action. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today, having that right message. So I'm going to give you probably the shortest course in brain science you've ever had. In my book, Radical Relevance, I go in a little more depth, but I want to cover a few important things because they're going to be the umbrella for a lot of what we talk about here today. So obviously the purpose of the brain is to keep us alive, right? And one of the ways it tries to keep us alive is to conserve energy, actually to spend fewer calories, just when a lot of us are actually trying to spend more calories, right? But it's trying to conserve energy. And because of that, it has a natural inclination to move towards clarity. Why? Because if something is confusing or uncertain, it takes more energy for the brain to process, and the brain doesn't like that. So I want to talk a little bit about clarity, and there's three basic places where I think clarity plays a role in your business, maybe more than three, but the first one, of course, is the clarity of your message, to make sure it resonates with people, that people understand it, and it hits very quickly. They don't have to think about it too much. So we always want to use words, phrases, concepts that are already in the brains of our prospects and clients. If I looked at just about everybody's website or a LinkedIn profile or any of your collateral material, it would be filled with marketing speak, financial advisor marketing speak, jargon that you don't even realize is jargon, and sometimes can create less clarity and not more clarity. So that's what today is going to be about. But there's a couple other places. Helping your prospects and clients get clear, right? The brain craves clarity, it craves certainty. That's why in this pandemic, things are a little, mixed up for a lot of people, because we lack the certainty of what's happening. And so one of the things that you can do to bring value very, very quickly with a brand new prospect is to help them get clear on where they are now, their buckets of money, their risk protection, et cetera. And then they're there. What does that look like? And some people are very clear on where they are now, what they have, and some have no clue, and you know that, right? Some know the weaknesses and the strengths of their benefits package from work, and some have no clue. And then they're there. What do they want their legacy to be? What do they want their retirement to look like? Again, some people clear, most people not clear. And that's your job, I think, at the beginning, is to create that context of clarity. And from there, you become the best possible servant to them. And then the next place of where clarity fits is how to work with you. Are they clear on what the next step is? We'll talk about that as we go. In marketing, they call it a call to action. What is the next step? And do you have a 3-meeting process, a 5-step process? What is it going to look like? Because if it's confusing to them at all, they may not take the next step, and then you've lost them. So clarity is huge for the brain, huge for your prospects, huge for your business. And the other thing is a study that was done by Antonio Damasio, a famed neuroscience, that actually has finally proven what we've always suspected. And at the heart of every decision that every human being makes is emotion. He studied subjects who had lost the ability to feel emotion, that part of the brain had been damaged. Because they couldn't feel emotion, they couldn't make a decision. They couldn't decide if they were going to have wheat flakes or corn flakes for breakfast. So if we know that going into any situation at the heart of the decision is emotion, that'll help us figure out how to communicate and talk to them. Now, I'm not saying that the logical part, statistics and morning, star reports and illustrations of life insurance and all that aren't important. They are important. But at the end of the day, the goal is to create an emotional response so someone will then take action on what they've just learned. So we're talking about communicating your value. Where are you communicating your value? Well, look at this list, like everywhere, right? Anytime you open your mouth and you talk about your business in some form or another, you're communicating your value. Now, today we'll talk a little bit about websites. We'll talk a little bit about LinkedIn profiles, mostly just because they're great canvases upon which we paint our value. I can look at somebody's website or a LinkedIn profile and get a pretty good idea of how she or he thinks about their value and wants that value to come across to their prospects and clients. But what we're going to talk about here today, it really applies to everything. An email, Deidre is going to be talking about presentations and seminars and everywhere, wherever we're opening our mouth or writing words, we're talking about our value. So what are we trying to accomplish, right? What are you trying to accomplish? Most people, when they think about communicating their value, they're thinking that I'm going to tell people what I do. This is what I do, without regard for other very important elements. So let me tell you the first mistake that most financial professionals make, and that is they try to impress too quickly. They try to create the credibility of themselves and their business too quickly in a brand new relationship. And I'm not saying this is an important thing to do. You do want to talk about your credentials. You do want to talk about your training and experience and expertise, but you got to be careful about how you do it and not do it too quickly. So to illustrate this, I want to talk a little bit about the original Star Wars movies. A lot of movies like Star Wars, the adventure movies, are what we call the classic hero's journey. And in a hero's journey, you have the hero, you have the villain, you have the guide, right? The hero encounters a problem, a villain, a challenge, and then they find a guide, someone to help them through that. Well, in Star Wars, of course, it's Luke as the hero, Darth Vader is the villain, and Yoda the guide was. And so it's important that anytime you talk about your value, the prospects, clients, centers of influence, that you're positioning your prospects and clients as the hero. And you and your team, you are the guide. You are applying for the job as the guide, but they want to be the hero of their own story. And you'll see how that plays out in just a minute. So, what villain, what challenge are you and I facing today on this program? Well, it's the mass communication and the overwhelm in the marketplace. What villain are you facing with your clients? Well, in some cases, it's confusion, right? It's just mixed messages from different sources. Annuities are bad. Annuities are good. You accomplish everything with life insurance. You should never buy an annuity, right? You hear it all. And what's the truth? The truth is, well, annuities aren't good or bad. They just are. They're a tool. If used right, the right annuity in the right place for the right person is a wonderful tool, right? So that confusion, one of the things is you're trying to help them feel better. One of the other things that the villain that you're trying to fight is worry, is uncertainty that was mentioned, right? And so we want to make sure that we provide that peace of mind, that reduction of stress. I think that's one of your jobs, is to reduce your prospects and clients' stress. So in the spirit of this, of me being the guide and not the hero, the people who visit my site are the hero, in my LinkedIn profile, I'm having a little fun. And I start off by saying, that's enough about me. Let's talk about you. And unfortunately, most websites and LinkedIn profiles is, let's talk about me. And let's talk about me a little bit more, and maybe I'll get to you if I have enough words left in the profile, right? And so you'll see if you go visit mine, by the way, and I welcome you to, and link up with me. I'm happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. And you'll see that the first paragraph is really towards folks like yourself I want to show a little empathy, a little appreciation, a little understanding for your world and your challenges. And the next paragraph that doesn't show on the screen is for the leaders in the financial services community, the agency managers, managing partners, trainers, etc. I want to show a little empathy, situational understanding for them. And then I start to apply for the job as the guide. So first thing, we're not trying to impress. We'll get to that, but not right off, right? Empathy is a big word for you guys to remember. It'll keep coming up today. We're obviously trying to attract the right people. In fact, when you write an email to a prospect, or when you write copy for your website or your LinkedIn profile, or really anything that you create, are you doing so in a way that you hope will attract the right people and repel the wrong people, right? Now, there are a few of you who are fairly new in this business, in which case, if they're breathing, you'll talk to them, and I get that, and you should. They could probably use your help, and you do need to pay the rent or the mortgage. And a lot of you have evolved to the point where you want to be a little more careful as to who you want to attract. So you want to make sure you pay attention to that as you're writing your messages and speaking your messages. And then ultimately, you want that call to action. Every piece of communication, virtually, maybe not every, but virtually every piece of communication you create should have a call to action. In marketing, they call it a CTA for short. Do you want them to respond to the email in a certain way, return your voicemail, click a link on a website? Look at your website. Look at your LinkedIn profile. Do you have specific things you want people to do as a result of being on a specific page? If you don't, you're hoping they'll figure it out themselves. And the truth is they may not. So if there's something you want them to do, need them to do, to provide your value, tell them, ask them, whatever it is, have a call to action. Move them to take action. So as I take a breath and swallow a glass of water here, a cup of water, you want to think about all your messaging needs to be relevant to them, empathetic. Empathy means appreciation for their situation, and then compelling to move them to take action. So, by the way, I have a free resource for you. A lot of you know me as the referral guy. I've been doing that forever, and I still do. But I have a new report that's kind of brings the two together, and that's the first one you see on this page. I'll be giving this website to you a few times because it's all free, right? I don't have anything to sell you here except for to use these ideas. And so if you go to referralcoach.com/resources, lots of free stuff for you, and I'll mention that a little bit as we go. So in my book, Radical Relevance, I have what I call the 17 rules of radical relevance. And don't worry, I'm not going to do all 17 here. I want to focus on a few as we go. So rule 13 is in the spirit of you being the guide, them being, prospects being the heroes, use more personal messaging. You want your messaging to move from I and we and our to you and your. Look at your LinkedIn profile, look at your website, look at the other places you communicate your message. Look at the emails you send. Every sentence starts with the letter or the word I, right? Now, you can't get away from that totally. I understand that. But again, we're trying to pull people into appreciation of their story, that we appreciate their story. And so you want to move towards you and your as much as you can. You'll see how I'm going to show you some websites here, so you see how folks do that. In the book, we talk about two levels of relevance, strategic and tactical. We'll do that here today as well. So we're going to be strategic, we're going to be tactical. So from the strategic level, it's really the big decisions that we all need to make. And this evolves over time. It's not a static decision. Who do we serve the best? Who do we want to serve? Who do we want to attract, right? We got to be clear on that, because clear intentions produce clear results. Vague intentions produce vague results. If we're not clear, we're unlikely going to say and do the right things to bring that into our world. So we want to talk a little bit about our target market, narrowing our focus in that regard. We want to talk about the bullseye of the market, which I call the right fit client. And then we're going to talk about differentiation, and we'll talk about differentiation when we get tactical, because I have a very specific formula I want to show to you that will help you figure out how to talk about what makes you a little bit different so you attract the attention of the people you want to. So your target market, a lot of you have a target market. You're already gaining benefits. You know the value. Some of you know about this, but maybe haven't taken that step in that direction yet. So I want to start with a a survey, and Artem's getting ready to cue this up. And the survey is this: are you already tapping into the reputation building of a clearly defined target market? Now, and go ahead and take this. Say yes, somewhat, no, whatever you want to do, whatever's true for you. And notice I say reputation building power, because when you focus on a specific target market, it is so much easier for you to create a reputation than it is if you have kind of a shotgun approach to marketing your business. So Artem, can you tell me what the results are?
As of right now, we've got about half of the people in, and we're leaning towards somewhat being 39%, and then yes and no are very close by with 30 each.
Okay, good. So for those of you who are doing it, I think you'll have a fine tuning here. You already know the power. For those of you who aren't, or just doing it kind of partly, I hope I can encourage you to jump in with both feet if it suits you in your business. It doesn't fit everybody. And do you have to target a specific market to be successful in this business? No, you don't. But it will help you be more successful more quickly if you do. And here's the reasons why. So first of all, it's easier to identify the prospects, the players, right? It's just so easy to get lists of folks these days. You bring better value. You bring initially more perceived value, but you bring real value, right? If you're targeting business owners in a specific industry, you know their world in a way that other people, generalists, don't. If you're targeting employees in a large company, you know the strengths and weaknesses of their benefits package in a way that a generalist wouldn't know. So if you're a specialist in a certain affinity group, then you're going to bring more real value, not just perceived value. You can join forces with different types of centers of influence. Luke Wiley is an extremely successful advisor in Cincinnati. If you know anything about Cincinnati, there's a large employer there with the initials P and G, Procter & Gamble, and he has staked his claim and his success in Procter & Gamble. One of the things he's done, he's identified other centers of influence, accountants, attorneys, and other folks who have also done the same. And so they partner and they join forces and bring a lot more value and share leads and referrals with each other, et cetera. Oscar is a financial advisor in Canada, in Quebec, and Oscar is focusing on dental practices. And so he found an accounting firm, one of their vertical markets is dental practices. And before COVID hit, every month they were hosting a dinner for their dental clients to introduce them to Oscar so he could talk and share some value. And he got new clients. He didn't have to pay for that and got a great meal to boot and new clients. And this is what happens. These are the opportunities that you start to find when you target a very narrow market. As I mentioned, easier to create a reputation because they know people like themselves. One of the good or the key attributes of a good target market is they have formal and informal ways of communicating with each other, right? They have meetings, they have newsletters, they have all kinds of different things. And things for that will loosen up as we move on, hopefully soon. And so that you can create that reputation, and therefore it's easier to get referrals, get introductions when you focus on this target or vertical market. And ultimately, in the spirit of what we're talking about today, your messaging, of course, is going to be more relevant, because you're going to know their world better than someone who doesn't know their world. So let me give you some examples. Todd McDonald, Albany, New York. Todd, when he was getting into this business probably 20 years ago or so, he went to some of the top folks in his firm and said, what would you do differently, right? If you had to do it all over again, what would you change? And almost to a person, they'd say, I try not to be all things to all people. As I first started, I try to create an expertise. I try to focus on a niche. So he took that to heart, and he had some affinity for construction. He had worked in some construction a little bit before and just liked that world. And pretty quickly, he decided he didn't want to work with small contractors and small types of construction. He liked working with the big boys, the big girls. And so he went after heavy construction. Now, when you look at Todd's website, it doesn't look like the average financial professional's website, right? I don't know about you, but I kind of miss the clip art of the retired couple walking down the beach hand in hand. But if you're in a heavy construction business, you're with the right advisor. You got the right guy, because he just oozes information, knowledge, understanding, empathy for folks in heavy construction. And in a couple minutes, I'll share with you his bullseye and how he got to his bullseye. Let me tell you about Alex. Alex is in Indianapolis. You can probably tell very quickly. He focuses on optometrists. 36,000 optometrists in this country. It's a pretty nice market. Both Todd and Alex have created national reputations for their business. And you've probably already discovered in COVID that the geography of your business may have, expanded a little bit and can expand. And you want to be careful not to limit yourself and get licensed in other states, because now that we can do things with Zoom and go to webinar, all that stuff, that we can expand that. Alex, extremely successful in this business, has never met a client in his niche face to face, at least not yet. Now I'm going to tell you about his bullseye in a minute, and it's very unique, and you'll see how he's going to end up meeting people face to face. When I was interviewing Adam for, I call him Alex, Adam, for an article, the one thing that stuck out with me, he says, the only regret I have is not doing this 5 years sooner, because it's been so successful narrowing his focus in this way. So to target, not to target, that's the question. So here are the things I hear from folks. Some people say, well, Bill, what about the current clients I already have? I mean, do I have to stop serving them? What are they going to think? Well, no, you don't have to stop serving them. Just keep doing a great job for them as you have been. Let them know that you're going to be placing some emphasis. You don't have to say all your emphasis, some emphasis on folks in a particular type of niche or affinity group, because you know what? They may know people in that group and are willing to help you. If they like you and see your value, they're often willing to help you. And so, no, you don't hold back. Now, some advisors, agents, this is how they scale their business, right? Where they bring in a junior agent or advisor to maybe serve some of those folks, those legacy clients, as the key person starts to focus on a niche. There's a lot of different ways to work that. The other concern, fear, I think mistaken assumption really, or limiting belief, is that if I just serve, this niche, these people, what about all this other opportunity? Aren't I going to miss all this other opportunity? Well, yeah, you might, but you're going to be so successful over here, you won't even notice it and you won't even care. And most of the people that dive into a niche like this and they pick the right one, they never look back and never wonder. That's why Adam said, should have done it 5 years ago. So let me show you Russ Thornton. Russ is out of Atlanta. Russ's website, you can see, is Wealth Care for Women. The red line, squiggly line around some of the text, that's my line. He didn't have that on the website, but look at that. It says, collaborative retirement management for professional women and their families aged 50 to 70. Very clear. And when you read through his homepage, you're going to see some important things. You're going to see that he uses verbiage that's not your typical financial marketing speak. He is pulling them in by using verbiage and concepts with which they can identify. Listen to this, whether that means ordering the good white burgundy when you're out with friends, taking your college-age kids to Tuscany, that'd be nice, doubling up on yoga classes, or having the housekeeper an extra day a week, right? He's speaking to affluent women, and affluent women will appreciate this and will say, oh, this guy gets me. This guy knows what some of my seemingly kind of frivolous challenges are, but it creates that sense of empathy. And then what I also like about Russ's homepage is that at the bottom, he talks about his why, his client-focused why, which is very powerful for us to do. I'm working with a client right now, Dennis, out of New England, and he created a video of his why that's going to be on the bottom of his homepage. And so look at the calls to action too. Request a call, start here. If I go up a little bit, start here. He's letting people know this is what it takes to get started with me. Having a call to action. So look, here's the deal. If you try to appeal to everyone, you run the risk of appealing to no one. The mistake that so many people make is expanding the tent, expanding the net, when they actually should be narrowing a little bit. It's got to be large enough to help you be successful. But what happens is the more you extend, and the more you don't want to leave out this group or this group or this group, you water down your communication. You water down the effectiveness of what you're saying to people. Can you have more than one target market? Yes, you can. And you want to make sure that your messaging is specific to each target. So don't forget, if you showed up a little bit late, welcome. And yes, you can get the slides here. If you send an email to me, billcatesreferralcoach.com, I will send the slides. Make sure you put NAIFA Arkansas or Arkansas or something to make sure I know that it's today's program. And we'll get that to you. I did mention my book. Artem mentioned it would be okay to mention this to you guys. So real quick, paperback, audio, and a Kindle. But it's more than just a book, because when I was writing this, there was just so much information I wanted to impart. I realized if I included everything, it would be such a big book that nobody would read it. And that doesn't do anybody any good, right? So I've created a section of information that we're calling it the Radical Relevance Toolkit. So if you get the book, within the first few pages, it'll show you how to register for the Radical Relevance Toolkit, and how to create a radically relevant LinkedIn profile, how to talk about your value in a more effective way, how to build a radically relevant website, scripts, all kinds of stuff, too much to mention on this slide. And so if you get the book, you'll get that. Let me know if you get it, because I would love to stay in touch with you. I just came off a coaching call in an agency where they have 6 second-year agents, advisors who are going through the book chapter to chapter, and I just sat in on one of their calls to do a little coaching, and it just it's very fulfilling for me to see people using the tools and having it make their business more successful. All right, so we got the target. Now let's look at the bullseye, which you heard me say is what I call a right fit client, a right fit client for you. And a right fit client is, someone you were meant to serve. It was meant to be served by you, that your value resonates with them immediately. If I ask you to think of your client base for a minute, and the people you typically talk to on a regular basis, and identify the right fit client, the people you would love more of, right? You can probably think of 2 or 3 or 4, maybe more folks that, yeah, I wish I had more just like that. That's the kind of person I'm talking about. So I promised you some examples. Todd McDonald, when he first started in this business, he wanted to work with wealthy individuals. Who doesn't in this business? And you don't have to be successful. You can do middle market, middle class. It's great. They need your help too. Nothing wrong with that. And he knew there was a lot of wealth contained in small business owners. And then he heard his colleagues say, focus, focus, focus. And so what about business owners in a specific industry, in his case, heavy construction? But he went narrower. After a couple of years, he figured out who he really liked to serve the best, the kind of work he liked to do, et cetera, et cetera. And if you ask Todd what his bullseye is, he would tell you closely held, family-owned, heavy construction companies. That's who he serves. If you don't have a family-owned, closely held, heavy construction firm, then go work with somebody else, because that's who Todd does his best work for, and that's who he wants to attract. And as I mentioned, he has a national practice. He has a home in Florida because he has a lot of folks down there in Florida. So he created another, remote office for himself there, et cetera. That's the kind of success you can have when you target. And Adam also wanted to work with people with money. Nothing wrong with that. He identified what he called white coat professionals. For Adam, white coat professionals were doctors, dentists, pharmacists, and optometrists. And so he wanted to narrow, and as you know, he finally settled on optometrists. It kind of helped that his wife is an optometrist. And what happened is, as he got to know his wife's business and know her colleagues and work with other optometrists, Adam became more than a financial advisor, financial consultant. He became a business consultant to these people because he saw what other people were doing to solve other problems not related to the core work he did. So he brought incredible value to these people. And that's what you can do when you target a market. You can bring so much more value than someone who doesn't, that's more of a generalist. And then now Adam's bullseye are optometrists that want to sell their business within 5 years. If you're an optometrist and you want to sell your business within 5 years, Adam is the guy in this country. He writes for the organization, for the industry associations. He speaks at conferences sometimes. He's identified a private equity firm that wants to help dentists sell their business. And so as soon as the pandemic, slows down a little bit, they're going to do a road show and they're going to sponsor him going out and talking with these people. Again, that's the kind of opportunity that presents itself when you narrow your focus like this. So one thing you want to figure out here is the demographics, right? So is age a factor? Well, you know, for us, it was 50 to 70. For some of you, it's 55 to 70, right? Everybody has a different mark. Some of you want to work with folks younger because you're younger. So if age is a factor, that needs to be part of it. Gender could be a factor. A lot of folks focus on women in transition and women business owners, et cetera. Location might be, you know, a factor. Financials almost always are, whether it's income, assets, et cetera. Occupation, industry, and you may have a few other things. So you want to get that down. But then you also want to make sure you think in terms of the psychographics. Why? Because at the heart of every decision that every human makes to take action is emotion. So you want to make sure you know how to articulate the emotional relationship these folks have with the work that you do. So how a doctor thinks and talks about the problems, concerns, may be different than how a teacher or educator does or a small business owner does. The concerns, the basic principles are the same, but the verbiage and the way they talk about it are different. And so you want to make sure you know how to communicate in a language that they're going to understand, and they're going to see you speak the same language that they do. So this is an example of what we call a persona in marketing. Some people call it an avatar. It's an ideal or right fit client. And so, you know, this gentleman who I'm pictured here, I'm sure exists because I bought his picture off of Adobe. But in this case, it's mythical. And so you can see on one side is a demographic, on the other side is this, mostly the psychographic. And I've said this phrase before, I'm going to say it again. Clear intentions produce clear results. Vague intentions produce vague results. When you are crystal clear and people who work with you are crystal clear on who you're trying to attract, then guess what? How you talk about your business, the things you say, the things you do are going to change a little bit, and you stand the chance of bringing people closer to that. Vague intentions produce vague results. Can you have more than one bullseye in a target? Absolutely you can. And in a second, I'll show you a couple of examples of how people have done that. So I want to do a quiz real quick just to pull you back in, and we'll see what people are doing. And the survey said, well, the question is, do you have 1, 2, or 3 clearly defined right fit clients, right? Have you defined exactly who it is? Age, gender, industry, financials, whatever is appropriate. Start the vote now. Yes, I have. I got it down. Well, sorta. More of a vagueness walking around, or no, it's probably something I ought to get to a little bit more so I can bring in the right people to my business. Because I'm telling you, just making this decision and getting clear. And if you work with a team, you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Otherwise, you have people talking about the value of the firm in different ways, and it creates a bit of confusion, or certainly doesn't create the alignment that you want to create. So Artem, how are we looking? What's it looking like, sir?
We're looking at about 42% sort of, yes coming in second at 35, and no at sitting around 22%.
Okay, so about a third yes, and the other third, 2/3, probably a little work to be done. So let me share with you a little bit more on this and how some people have done this sort of thing. So Mickey Rosenzweig, extremely successful in this business with Penn Mutual out of, well, initially New York. Now he also has an office in Boca Raton. And his businesses, for the most part, has been built around healthcare professionals, mostly specialists and surgeons, right? High income earners. But he's also done work with small business owners over the years, and he likes that, and he didn't want to lose that type of business. He likes the variety. So if you go to his website, this is what you'll see. You'll see his 2 personas. You'll see his 2 target markets, and you click on either one of them, and then you will learn more. You'll get messaging that's appropriate to those folks. Caleb Hardy, we just started working together a few weeks ago, and he gave me permission to share his website. It's got a great website. And one of the things he does is, now you can see that these are kind of disparate. These are not all somewhat related. Better that they're more related, but this is something that he created later. He kind of retrofitted onto his business. He realized, oh, I work with successful professionals. I work with people approaching retirement, business owners. So if I'm a business owner approaching retirement, or if I'm a successful professional approach, I'm not quite sure what to click, right? So he and I are working on that. But he also works, and 60% of his business is families with children with special needs. And so when you see that, if you're a family with children with special needs, you go, okay, this guy has some experience, some expertise in what's so important to me. And so he goes deeper in that. Some folks will have videos on their page around this sort of thing. But then, so if you have more than one persona, bullseye that you're trying to track, whether they're related in the same target market or not, make sure as soon as they get to your website, make sure in your LinkedIn profile description that there are links where they can immediately see it, identify themselves with that, click it, and then all the messaging will be tailored to them. Because it's very difficult to craft messaging, a website, LinkedIn, whatever, that encompasses different types of groups and stays relevant for everyone. It's going to really weaken the messaging. So again, the more precise, the more powerful. You want to get as narrow and precise as you possibly can. Now, a target market needs to be big enough, right? It needs to be able to, so it can sustain you, if not your whole career, at least a good part of it. It needs to have the financial capacity to be able to allow you to do the work that you want to do. It also, it's nice if you like these people, right? I mean, I was talking with this group this morning at a Wichita, and one guy says, well, you know, I have some attorneys, and I was thinking maybe attorneys. I said, do you like working with attorneys? Well, not especially. I said, well, you know, serve the ones you have, great. But you don't want to make that, you know, your future necessarily, right? He said, yeah, I guess not. So, and then the fourth element is, as I mentioned earlier, formal and informal ways of communicating. Very important, because that's how you start to build that reputation, and it makes referrals easier. If they don't have formal and informal ways of communicating, like just pre-retired individuals, there isn't an association of pre-retired that you're going to be able to tap into and build that reputation, right? So just a reminder that we have all these free resources, another list of stuff. We got videos, we got audios. If you like what you're hearing here, you want to go deeper, all of this is free, all right? This is all free, no gimmicks here. So let's get tactical, shall we? You're going to want to take some notes on this one for sure, and you're going to get the slides if you ask for them, right? And so you can get the verbiage. I'm going to share some very specific verbiage here. What makes you different? Now, a lot of people struggle with this, but it doesn't always have to be a struggle. But there are a couple key things to remember. In my book, rule number 5 is only differences that matter. So when you talk about things that make you different, like your company is 175 years old, you know, if you work for a certain company that turned 175 this year, or I was working with a bank and they said they're 126 years old. Well, so what? Right? What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything really, unless you say, so what that means to you is, right? You need to make it matter to them. Otherwise, they're not going to get it. So let's do a little survey here, see where we are, and then I'll tell you a little more about how to do this. The survey said, when you talk about what makes you different, do you tie that to one or more specific examples? One of the things that makes us a little different is this, for example, or what that means to you is, are you talking about your differences in kind of a vacuum? Or are you making them relevant to the people with whom you're communicating? So for instance, one thing I saw, this was a few years back, there was kind of a trend in the business where folks were building websites based on a hobby or a special interest as a way of branding themselves differently in the marketplace. Horses, fishing, dogs, cooking, whatever it is. And look, there's nothing wrong with allowing your personality to come through on your website. I think that's great. You want to be genuine, authentic, et cetera, to who you are. And sometimes it creates fun and some interest, but it's not necessarily a difference that matters. It's not necessarily a difference that's going to attract the right people to you and not worry about the rest. So Artem, how are we doing on this one?
As of right now, we got about 54% say yes, and then it's split down the middle between somewhat and no.
All right, so for the 54% of you, bravo, you got it. You know the difference between a feature and a benefit, right? The fact that you have a specific expertise in an area, feature. What that means to the prospect, benefit. The fact that you've been in business for 20 years, feature. What does that mean to the prospect? Benefit. The fact that you have your CHFC, your CFP, whatever credentials you may have earned. Feature. What that means to the person you're talking to. That's the benefit. And that's what we want to do when we're talking about our differentiation. So let me share with you this, the formula. Well, first I want to talk about this. Sorry. All right. So target market will help set you apart. It's probably the easiest, biggest one way to really look different in the marketplace, because you are going to bring an empathy and knowingness and understanding and real tangible value that is different. And they will get that right away. They, just by the questions you ask, the folks in a target market can see that you're different. The questions you ask will reveal a knowingness and understanding about their situation. And that's probably the easiest and best way to stand out. Now, you might have a special expertise, such as working with families with children with special needs, like Caleb Hardy does, or maybe something else. You may have earned a very specific credential. Now, generally speaking, by the way, what I've discovered with compliance departments, unless you fulfill a certain requirement of education and designation, they don't like you to call yourself an expert, but that you can say, I have expertise in, or you can say, I am a specialist. Now, I am not a compliance department. I don't play one on TV. So you want to check with yours, but just generally speaking, that's what I've seen. Now, it could be the process you use for uncovering gaps and problems, right? If you have a very robust, very thorough discovery process, perhaps more thorough than what most people use, then that could be what sets you apart. And you want to make sure you have some examples and you can bring that to life a little bit, and you'll see that in a second. You may have a process for how you stay in touch with your clients over time. That most people don't. And so I'll give you a quick example. Al Fox, very successful advisor in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. I've been working with Al for a long time. And this is what Al does. When he's in front of a prospect, be it on Zoom or in person, he says, you know, should we work together? Let me tell you a little bit about our client service promise, how we're going to stay in touch, what it would look like. And he talks about how many review meetings. He talks about the client appreciation events, the educational events, the newsletter he sends out, the this, the that, all the different things that are part of his client service promise. And what usually happens, he says, is the client goes, wow, you do all that? Yeah, this is our promise. We will do it. Oh, okay. Where do I sign, right? This is how we quite often, quote unquote, closes the business, confirms the relationship, is by just sharing what, you know, how he's going to stay in touch. And it looks different from whomever they worked with in the past. And then finally, if you're not sure, or if you'd like to clarify and get a little more meat on the bones, talk to your clients. Rule number 2 in the radical rules of relevance is always give your clients a seat at the table. Whenever you're working on your branding, your value proposition, any type of promotion, focusing on a niche, whatever it is, talk to some clients. There's some of those that love you. They'd be happy to help you. They'll give you their perspective. They'll tell you things. They'll give you phrases that you've never heard before and that you can use if appropriate. So I'll give you an example. One of my clients, Michael Schmitz, is in San Mateo, California. As I was doing this, he's the managing partner of his firm. And he says, Bill, you make asking for referrals as natural as breathing. I go, wow, that's pretty good. I never would have thought of saying that. Thank you, Michael. Can I quote you on that? He goes, yeah, sure. Right? Now, for me just to say that, I make asking for, you know, it sounds a little arrogant, right? It sounds a little bit too much marketing hype. So what we do is we soften it up by putting in the words of the person who actually said it. And I have his picture there and all of that. So we use that in a way that we get the words into the conversation, but hopefully not making me seem quite so arrogant. I hope I'm not. Anyway, so that's a little bit of sources of your differentiation. So here's the formula. I got this formula, by the way, from Karen Kopp Carl Gould, who wrote a book called Biz Dev Done Right. I feature the book a little bit in my book. They know I talk about it, and I want to give credit where credit is due. And the formula goes like this. Anyone can, but only we can. For example, it could be many people can, or most, but only a few, right? So it doesn't have to be, you know, the extremes of anyone, only we. But the for example should be a constant here. Whenever we talk about our value, who we serve, how we do it, There's always should be an example behind that brings it to life. So let me give you two very specific real world, real person differentiation gap examples. So this person's, wrote with a little bit of wordsmithing with me. Many financial professionals can talk about preparing a financial plan that takes you into the future. That's not hard to find. And there was a time when financial planning actually was kind of unique and hard to find. It's becoming more and more prevalent, and that's a good thing because it's an important thing to do. If we're going to serve our clients well, we need to know who they are. We need to gain context on the demographic and psychographic aspects of who they are. So doing a plan does that. So that's not quite the distinguisher as it used to be, but very few do the planning, right? Specialize in working with business owners of companies in your industry. This expertise allows me to serve as your financial quarterback, assembling a team of specialists to handle all of your financial needs, kind of an implied benefit, not the full benefit there, but the for example brings that to life, right? So one of my clients, owner of a company, told me that the other day he appreciates that he is now freed up to do what he does best, running his business, making money, ultimate benefit. So sometimes we need that, for example, to bring it full, completion to that full benefit. So that's one example, and that's obviously focusing on a specific industry. Another one, many financial professionals can talk to you about various financial tools and products, not hard to find, but very few have the depth of knowledge that I do about your company's benefits package. By focusing on your firm, I'm able to anticipate challenges and opportunities that others simply can't, resulting in a better course of action. Notice I did not say, and purposely did not say, resulting in a better plan. The plan is not really the benefit. Now, yes, there are some clients coming in saying, or prospects saying, yeah, I think I need a plan. I really like to have a plan, right? So for them, perhaps, but really the plan is a means to an end, is it not? So I like to use the words course of action, action plan, plan of action, and then finally the for example. And this is an example of how this person heard something from a client like I did with Michael Schmitz, and he wanted to know, could he use it? And this client said that, he says, look, you know more about our company's benefits package than our HR department does. Bill, can I use that? I go, well, yeah, let's find a way to use it. But you just saying it outright, kind of negative towards the HR people. You don't really want to do that if you can help it. Let's soften it up. Let's put it in the words of the person who actually said it. So this person actually, yeah, I've had more than one people say it. All right, good. So let's do that. Let's quote them. And so now he's able to put that very powerful distinguisher. And if you have a prospect who maybe has not gotten very good answers from their HR department, maybe different answers from the 3 different people they talk to, then they're going to go, oh yeah, this guy knows my world, right? That's that empathy, that appreciation, understanding, and that pretty much seals the deal, right? So only people, the differences, they only care about your differentiation if it's relevant to them. So you probably over time want to come up with more than one. And so you can trade out the one that seems appropriate for that person, that context. There's many different ways you can differentiate yourself. Now, I'm going to send you this formula, by the way. If you ask for the slides, just send an email as a reminder to billcates@referralcoach.com. And I will send you the slides. I will also send you this and 2 other differentiation formulas. And if you want to work it up and send it over to me for my feedback, I'm happy to do it. No cost, no charge. It's just my gift to NAIFA. I love NAIFA and the work you guys do and want to support any way I possibly can. Also, and by the way, we're about to get to the Q&A section, folks. If you're interested in the book, it's Radical Relevance. And we do, of course, offer coaching of different levels for different purposes. If you go to coachcates.com, you can learn about that. Be happy to chat with you about that if that seems appropriate for you. So, folks, let's open it up. Let's see if we have any questions coming in on what we talked about.
All right, if anyone has any questions, feel free to use the question and answer section of Zoom. If you prefer to use the chat, feel free to do that as well. And then we can have Bill answer those as they come in.
And so I'll start by asking a question I'm often asked, so to prime the pump a little bit here. And that is, Bill, can you have more than one target market? And, you know, how do I do that, right? Well, the answer is yes, you can. But I don't recommend trying to work more than one, or start, I should say, more than one at a time. So you want to start with one, get it humming, get it working. Then if you can identify another target market that is somewhat related to that first one, that makes things easier, because there's quite often overlap between the different target markets and one can feed the other. So that's not a bad thing to do. But there are people that, and you've seen it on the slides, that people that have different target markets, you know, successful medical professionals and successful business owners, right? A lot of differences there, but certainly, you know, an advisor and agent could serve both of those markets well. Another question I'm asked as we're waiting for the questions to come in, guys, don't be shy, please, is what about, you know, if you're new, if you're fairly new in this business, should I be looking at this? And the answer is yes, you should be. And be careful though, because what you don't want to do is come up with what you think would be a great market and just, you know, run full bore with that and give up other things that you're doing, natural market, maybe some leads for a few years, to, you know, to keep things going until you've determined this really is a good market and I do want to jump in with both feet. So you want to be just a little careful around that. Be measured in how much you go into that. And then veterans ask me, well, Bill, how do I figure out what my market should be? Well, if you're a veteran, if you're established in this business, look at your book of business. That's the first place to start. Just about every veteran could look at their book and see clumps, right? All of these people are kind of part of the same family, extended family, were referred to me. All these people work for the same company, or I've got 2 or 3 big companies represented here. And these folks work in the same industry, or they're business owners, got, you know, 4 dental practices here, right? So look at what you've got and decide, is there one there? Is it big enough? Does it have the financial capacity? Do you like working with those people? They have formal and informal ways of communicating with each other, in which case, yes, that you're probably sitting on an opportunity right there, and you want to start to talk to them. So the guy I was coaching, one of the group this morning, he actually, interestingly enough, is used to be a professional in the rodeo circuit. And so he wants to focus on rodeo people. I don't know what you call them, right? And actually nationally, it's quite a large group. And he's got credential because he was successful in that group. And so what is he doing? He's joining the associations, he's getting involved, he's reacquainting people with himself in a way that shows credibility. He's bringing that new credibility in his new field to a very natural market. Your natural market, where you worked before you got into this business, could very well be your new target market. So Artem, I'm not seeing any questions come in there. I'm seeing people chatting. Maybe there's some that came through that. You want to call it out to me?
I don't see any questions via chat or any of the Q&As. Let's see if there's oh, we're getting positive feedback that people like.
That's nice. Thank you.
Positive feedback is, you know, it's kind of like a question.
Smooth with no glitches. Thank you, Jonathan. I have done this a few times. Gosh, you know, guys, look, there's my email address. If a question comes to you an hour, no, not an hour, you know, make sure you hear Delvin and Deidre first and everybody else that's going to be talking, but later today or next week. And then we just had a question come in naturally when I'm about to leave. Hey, Coach. Hey, Corey. How do I shift to the development of a younger, more diverse demographic in this current environment? Well, that's the beautiful thing about the referral process, of course, is that you can start to direct your business in the direction you want it to go, right? You can, wherever you're trying to go, you start talking about that. And so sometimes you want to talk to your clients, and it can go both ways. So for instance, you can talk to your clients about their children, their adult children, if you want to move in that direction. And your natural market, you can talk about their adult children. I was working with a guy named Prasad who was asking for introductions, and he found he was mostly just getting introduced from his clients to the children. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's part of extending the family relationship, the intergenerational wealth and all that, which is an important conversation. But he really wanted to get also introduced to, you know, the older folks, the people with more assets. And so I said, well, you've got to define your request. You have to teach people who you'd like to be introduced to. And so you can't expect them to send people your way that you want unless you talk to them about. So that's the easiest thing. The other thing I would say, Corey, is that especially as things open up and we can actually start to go to live events safely again, to find some types of networking events of young professionals, young entrepreneurs, Entrepreneurs Association. There's all kinds of groups out there where people who are a little younger but also pretty successful gather. So you want to find out, where do these people congregate? Any kind of affinity group that's a good one that you want to go after has a quote unquote congregation, right? It may be online, it may be in person. Usually it's a combination of that. So that's how you start to target those. Jim asked when the slides will be available. As soon as everybody just sends in, Bill Cates referral coach, NAIFA Arkansas, we'll get that available probably within several hours, certainly before my dinner time. We will get the slides out to everybody. And if you do it later, we'll get it out to you later too. So I think my time's up. We probably ought to move on. I don't want to take up anyone else's time.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Much appreciated.